Today we look at Luke 12, verses 35 to 40, a very important text, words of Jesus, dealing with one of his central teachings, unique to him, and showing us the importance of vigilance, of awareness, of attention. This then became, in the ancient mystical Christian tradition, the idea of the watch of the heart, which the Neptic Fathers, as they were called from the Greek nepsis, taught generations, centuries of monks down through the ages, through many classic works like St. John Climacus, The Ladder of Divine Ascent. This is the tradition of Hezekiah, inner silence, sacred silence, the development of a consciousness, a presence to the moment that is crucial for the remembrance of God, for communion with God, for mastery of self, for unification within. We begin with the reading. Be dressed, ready for service, and keep your lamps burning like men waiting for their master to return from a wedding banquet, so that when he comes and knocks, they can immediately open the door for him. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them watching when he comes. I tell you the truth, he will dress himself to serve, will have them recline at the table, and will come and wait on them. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them ready, even if he comes in the second or third watch of the night. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. You also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. Now, these teachings can be easily misunderstood. That is the danger of metaphor and imagery, parable, because it veils an inner teaching. It is a mode of transmitting something that can be grasped at multiple levels. So, for instance, some teachers of the faith have used this in reference to the end of the age, when Christ returns, missing the immediacy, the existential quality, the transformational teaching that is present here. Those words translated as be dressed for action are a modern sanitized version of gird your loins, which is when in ancient times those tunics were tightened around the legs so that one could move quickly within them, as opposed to flowing downwards and inhibiting movement. And this metaphor speaks to our self-awareness. So we go from the ancient method of rearranging your tunic to a state of presence, a state of consciousness that is not distracted, that is not lost in imagination, that is aware of its surroundings, that is in the moment. All of this before the end of the first sentence. You can see how easily this can be missed, especially by those who stay on the surface of things or who get lost in the imagery, and even more so by those who reduce it to historical critical methodologies, literary redaction, and have no sense of what is being transmitted in terms of spiritual teaching. Keep your lamps burning, a second metaphor. Now this is nighttime, and historians know that weddings would take place at night, the long procession through the streets, and therefore the members of the bridal group would have lamps to light the way for the bride and groom, and in particular for the groom who was in charge of all this. And so it's natural that in that context, in that imagery, one would be maintaining one's lamp in anticipation of the return of the groom, so that they can enter the home and have light. But you can also see that keeping your lamp burning in reference to timeless spiritual teaching has to do with retaining a level of awareness that is consistently sharp, consistently present. And when we understand ourselves somewhat and human nature, we know that we are continually defaulting to dreaminess, to associations, to lack of focus, to worry and fear, and a continual stream of anything but what it represents to keep one's lamp burning. That degree of focused attention, of intentional presence, is advanced work, if you will, especially in our time when distraction is intensified by technology to an extent unseen in human history. There are different forms of this focus. One can think of the Native American hunter who waits all day under cover for his prey to arrive and who stays undistracted for hours at a time. That is a physical level of this kind of attention. But we are speaking again of spiritual things. This is why it is called Holy Scripture. This is the mission of Christ, to give us these teachings. And so, going through our day with that remembrance of God, that staying awake, for anyone who attempts it, it is clear that this is very difficult. It requires a continual return to that state, a recognition of what keeps us from it, of what interferes with it, and perhaps most of all, a realization of what is lost when we are not in that state of single-mindedness, of inner unification, of focus, when we are masters of the mind and not the other way around, when we have overcome this fragmentation and chaos within. The sentence ends with, so that when he comes and knocks, they can immediately open. What a wonderful, rich expression, immediately open, to be immediately responsive to divine inspiration, to the presence of Spirit, to the touch of grace, immediately. This implies how far we can be from that kind of sensitivity. If we are lost in irritation, impatience, imagination, self-absorption, we cannot be tuned in to immediately respond. This is why religion has attempted to give us ways in which we come back to that awareness, but so often that is reduced to ritual and habit and mechanical action, or worse, obligation, with no reference to what its real purpose is, which is to keep the lamps burning. This effort of mindfulness, or as the Sufis say, zikr, which is remembrance of God, is found in many of the great teachings, but it is most sharpened in its presentation through the teachings of Christ. Keep watch, keep awake, wake, do not sleep. This consciousness of God, this using of our free will for that single purpose, the very purpose for which we were born, the very essence of our identity, is the pathway home, is theosis, is God realization, divinization. That very simple thing of attention, which we take for granted, which we use without valuation, which we waste away every day, is the key to communion with God. The very thing that we let hemorrhage through the endless options of distractions, the life force that we waste away each and every day, is the very thing that would give ultimate meaning and purpose to our existence.